Chapter 41. The Cat's Corpse and the Headless Snakes. As the old saying goes, when the reward is heavy, even cowards find courage. The two workers, hearing that Trong Yok Tang had increased the pay, no longer cared about bad luck or superstition. They jumped into the pit, retrieved the wooden box, and placed it before me. I crouched down to examine the carvings and talismans engraved across its surface. A faint unease stirred within me. Muttering under my breath, I said, "This is no ordinary burial. Someone with true skill left this here." With a thin branch, I gently opened the lid. The instant it came loose, a foul stench surged out, thick and nauseating. Everyone around instinctively covered their noses. Trong Van Zhao went pale, eyes wide open with horror. "Who could do something so cruel?" she gasped. Trong Yok Tang trembled, his entire body shaking. Inside the wooden box lay the corpse of a cat. Its belly had been slit open, organs spilling out, the flesh was decayed, the fur stiff with rot. Both eyes had been gouged out, leaving two hollow sockets, and even its teeth were gone, gums dark with dried blood. It was a sight of pure malice. One glance told me the animal had been tortured alive, and judging from the level of decay, it had been buried for more than 10 days. Trong Yok Tang stared blankly into the box, voice trembling. "Young Master No, what does this mean? Why would a cat's corpse be buried in my family's ancestral grave?" I replied evenly. "The feng shui of your ancestral tomb was originally excellent, but someone deliberately planted a dark formation here that feeds on death and corruption. Over time, it has drained the blessing of your family's land. The vitality beneath this earth is completely gone." I stepped a few paces northeast and pressed my foot to the ground. "There's more buried here. Keep digging." Trong Yok Tang's face darkened as he barked an order to the workers. After a few minutes, their shovels struck something solid. Another box, this one painted crimson red, was pulled from the soil. Even before the lid opened, the stench was unbearable. Inside lay 9 headless snakes, their bodies tangled together in a grotesque coil. Their flesh had long since rotted, oozing black sludge that soaked the wood. When the two boxes were placed side by side, Trong Yok Tang and Trong Van Gao could only stare at me in stunned disbelief. He clasped his hands together, bowing slightly. "Young Master No, you truly live up to your master's name, the disciple of the Feng Shui King Li Xiangtong himself. I've invited so many so-called masters before, and not one found anything wrong. But you uncovered this horror in mere moments. I can hardly believe it." I glanced around the barren land. "Look closely. Even the weeds around the tomb are withered. This place is saturated with death qi. The culprit used a forbidden technique from the Luban dark craftsmanship to seal it here. But," I paused, sensing a deeper disturbance beneath my feet, "there's still one final anchor below, the true core of this formation." I pointed toward the northeast. 7 steps in that direction. Dig there." The workers followed my instruction. After an hour, a shovel struck something again, this time a white-painted box, smaller and eerily pristine. The sight of that color made the hairs on my neck rise. When Trong Yok Tang saw it, his expression shifted from respect to awe. "Even the color, you predicted it exactly." I gave a faint smile. Prediction? No. Experience. But before I could stop him, Trong Yok Tang stepped forward eagerly and pulled at the lid. "Wait, don't!" I shouted. Too late. A jet of black vapor burst out like lightning, slamming straight into his chest. He stiffened instantly, eyes rolling white, and collapsed to the ground without a sound. "Don't touch him," I warned, as Trong Van Zhao rushed forward in panic. "That's death qi. Anyone who touches him will be struck as well." Everyone froze. Trong Van Zhao fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face. "Young Master No, please save my father." "Calm yourself. I'm here." I knelt beside Trong Yok Tang's body. His forehead had turned ashen black, lips blue, breath faint, the unmistakable mark of death qi invasion. If not expelled quickly, his soul would never return. "Uncle Hu, bring me the silver needles." Uncle Hu ran over immediately, unrolling a cloth pouch lined with silver needles that gleamed faintly under the lantern light. Without hesitation, I took one and drove it straight into the Dancheng acupoint at the center of his chest. Moments later, I withdrew it. A thick drop of black blood welled up and dripped onto the ground. The instant it touched the soil, Trong Yaktang gasped violently. His chest heaved, breath rushing back, as though dragged from the edge of the abyss. He was alive.
Chapter 42. The Vengeful Bone. After Cheong Nok Than regained consciousness, he sat weakly on the ground, his face pale as ash. He touched his chest, still trembling, and said with lingering fear, "Young Master No, if it weren't for you, I would have already joined my ancestors by now." I helped him up and said calmly, "You were struck by Death Chi hidden in that white box. The one who set this formation is truly ruthless. But if you're still alive, it means heaven hasn't abandoned your family yet." I then turned toward the box lying open beside us. Inside was not an animal corpse this time, but a piece of human bone, long and thin, blackened as if burned by fire. Strange runes were carved into its surface, and faint traces of blood shimmered in the carvings under the dim light. Cheong Van Gao covered her mouth, horrified. "Is that a human bone?" I nodded solemnly. "More than just that. It's a vengeful bone, the remnant of a person who died with deep resentment. Someone deliberately carved forbidden sigils into it and buried it here to anchor the dark formation. Once the bone merges with the land's spiritual veins, it draws the yin energy from the tomb and turns it into death essence. That's why your family has suffered one misfortune after another recently." Uncle Hu, who had been standing beside me, frowned deeply. "Master No, this sort of thing isn't just evil, it's demonic work. If the bone's spirit hasn't dispersed yet, could it still be haunting the place?" I took a long breath. The spirit bound to this bone has indeed not vanished. It's what attacked Mr. Cheong just now. When I finished speaking, the air around us grew cold. Even the torches flickered violently, their flames bending as if pressed by invisible hands. Everyone could feel it, a malicious presence slowly spreading through the night air. Suddenly, the box began to shake. A faint sound like a sigh rose from within. Then a low, miserable wail echoed out, followed by a burst of icy wind that extinguished half the torches nearby. Cheong Van Gao screamed and clung to her father. Cheong Nok Than's legs nearly gave out. "Young Master No, what should we do now?" I narrowed my eyes. Everyone step back. Drawing a talisman from my sleeve, I bit my finger and pressed a drop of blood onto it. The rune flared with crimson light. Then, with a flick of my wrist, I threw it toward the box. "Evil bound to bone, disperse!" The talisman struck the air above the box and burst into sparks. But instead of burning through, a shrill, ear-piercing cry erupted from the box. The bone rose by itself, spinning mid-air, its carved runes glowing with blood-red light. The workers screamed and fled. Only Uncle Hu, Cheong Nok Fan, and Cheong Van Gao stayed close, trembling. A vague human silhouette began to form around the bone, thin, twisted, its face blurred beyond recognition, but its mouth gaped wide open, emitting a cry of endless hatred. I shouted, "Uncle Hu, give me the cinnabar gourd!" He tossed it over. I caught it, pulled the stopper, and scattered a stream of red cinnabar dust into the air. As soon as the powder touched the spirit's form, smoke hissed upward. It shrieked, twisting violently. But then, from inside the mist, a second voice, a man's voice, echoed coldly. "You dare to meddle with my work, child of the No line?" My heart skipped a beat. The voice wasn't coming from the spirit. It came from somewhere far away, a resonance through the curse itself. "Who are you?" I demanded. "One who builds tombs for kings and digs graves for gods," the voice replied. "You broke my formation today, but you will never escape its root." The vengeful bone flared once more, glowing with furious light. It hurled itself toward me like a dagger. I thrust my palm forward. Heaven-earth seal! Golden light burst from my hand and struck the bone mid-flight. There was a deafening crack. The bone shattered into powder, scattering across the ground like ash. The howling stopped. The cold wind ceased. The night grew still again. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Cheong Nok Than let out a long sigh of relief. He knelt before me and said solemnly, "Young Master No, if it weren't for you, the Cheong family would have perished tonight. Please accept my vow of eternal gratitude." I quickly stopped him. "There's no need. The true enemy still hides in the shadows. The person who placed this formation will strike again." Cheong Van Gao looked at me anxiously. "Do you know who it is?" I shook my head. "No, but whoever it is, they're not doing this for revenge alone. This entire region's feng shui has been corrupted. It's as if someone is harvesting death itself." The words lingered in the cold air. No one dared speak. Far off in the mountains, a lone wolf howled beneath the pale moonlight, its cry echoing through the valley like a dirge. And beneath our feet, deep within the earth, something pulsed once more, a faint rhythmic heartbeat, as if the land itself was alive and watching.
Chapter 43. Breaking the Earth and Unearthing the Graves. Hearing my words, Trong Nuk Tang broke into a cold sweat. His forehead glistened, and Trong Van Gyao stood tense beside him, face pale with anxiety. After a long silence, Trong Nuk Tang finally straightened his back, looked at me earnestly, and said, "Young Master Ngo, I don't understand much about these things. Whatever you say, I'll do exactly that. Just tell me what needs to be done, as long as we can settle this matter once and for all." I nodded solemnly. "First, we must burn all the wooden boxes and the talismanic objects buried inside them. Then, at an auspicious hour, we'll open the graves and lift all the coffins from this site. Keep them inside the family hall for 3 days, and after that, I'll find a new feng shui location for reburial. Only then will your family's misfortune completely be dispelled." Trong Nuk Tang frowned. "And when is the best time to dig?" I calculated for a moment, moving my fingers through the air. "The Z hour, around midnight tonight, is the most suitable moment. Everything must be done then." "Understood. We'll do it as you say." He and I exchanged a nod. Soon after, Uncle Hu and I got into his car and followed him back to his ancestral home in Vingpham County. Though called an old mansion, Trong Nuk Tang had renovated it beautifully. The courtyard was vast, wide enough for cars to drive straight in. When we arrived, his son Trong Van Luong was asleep, sprawled comfortably on the couch. The moment Trong Nuk Tang saw his son, anger flared across his face. He still hadn't forgotten the boy's earlier insolence toward me. Without hesitation, he yanked his son up by the collar. The two began shouting at each other, father and son locked into yet another heated argument. Neither would back down. Both were stubborn as mules. Watching them bicker, I turned toward Trong Van Gao and asked, "Is your brother always like this?" With an apologetic smile, she said softly, "Young Master No, please forgive him. It's entirely my brother's fault. He didn't know who you were, so he spoke recklessly. Father's always busy with business, so my brother grew up without much discipline. He's quick-tempered, arrogant, and always off offending people. If father hadn't shielded him all these years, he'd probably have had his legs broken by now." Her honesty made me chuckle. It was rare to see a sister talk about her brother that way. Then I asked, "When did he start having nightmares?" "More than 20 days ago," she replied. "Every night he dreams of falling from a building and dying. Father took him to the hospital, but they found nothing wrong. Even the psychologist said it was just stress. But how could he be stressed? All he does is drink, party, and chase girls." I frowned. Could this have something to do with the disturbance in their ancestral graves? The timing was suspicious. His nightmares began right around when the family's misfortunes started. But feng shui usually affects luck, not the mind. It shouldn't cause someone to dream of dying night after night. Still, something about it didn't sit right with me. I filed the thought away for later. That evening, Trong Nuk Tang prepared a rich meal for us. We ate quickly. Time was slipping toward the Z hour. But as the night deepened, trouble struck again. Perhaps from the day's stress or from his argument with his son, Trong Nok Tang's blood pressure spiked. He grew dizzy, barely able to stand. He clearly couldn't accompany us to the graveyard. I told him, "Stay at home and rest. Send a steward to assist instead." After a moment of thought, he nodded and said, "Then Gao will go with you, and Van Luang should go too." He probably feared gossip if his daughter went with me alone. To be honest, I didn't want Van Luang tagging along. He struck me as the type who'd only cause trouble. But Trong Nok Tang insisted, warning his son, "You are to obey young Master Ngo completely tonight. If you mess this up, I'll break your legs myself." Yeah, I got it," Van Luang muttered, eyes full of resentment. Earlier, Van Giao had mentioned that her brother had been staying up all night lately to avoid nightmares. That meant he'd be alert and restless tonight, which could be either helpful or disastrous. We brought along 8 workers and set out for the Trong family cemetery once more. The laborers looked uneasy. After witnessing the strange incidents earlier, none of them wanted to return. It took Trong Nok Tang doubling their pay before they reluctantly agreed. When we arrived, the cemetery looked even gloomier than it had during the day. The moon hung low behind drifting clouds, and fragments of white bone glimmed faintly in the dark soil, remnants from animals disturbed by past construction. The sight made everyone's skin crawl. Meanwhile, Van Luang seemed oblivious, playing with his phone under the faint light. Just looking at him made my patience wear thin. As the clock neared midnight, I positioned myself near the ancestral tomb, consulted my compass, and pointed to a patch of ground. "Start here," I commanded. The workers, strong men from nearby villages, set to work with their shovels. Within an hour, they had dug up 2 coffins. Dark red water seeped from the soil, streaking the ground like blood. Still, the men pressed on. Perhaps the fear from earlier had dulled into resignation. When the first coffin was raised, its lid cracked open, and what lay inside made everyone gasp. Just as I had predicted, this was a yin corpse site, a burial ground where bodies do not decay, even after hundreds of years. The coffin was half rotten, yet the corpse inside was perfectly preserved, the skin pale but intact, as though the person were merely asleep. The 2 coffins contained 1 elderly man and 1 woman, most likely the ancestors of the Trong family. Fortunately, Trong Nok Tang had already prepared new coffins nearby. Following my instruction, the workers carefully transferred the remains into the new caskets. We had just finished moving the second one when Trong Van Gao's phone suddenly rang. She glanced at the screen, and her face turned white. She answered quickly, listened for only a moment, and then looked at me with eyes wide in horror. "Young Master Ngo, it's father. The steward just called. He's gone mad."
Chapter 44. The Woman's Laughter. At that moment, I was still directing the workers to excavate the tombs. The relocation of ancestral graves could not be done carelessly. It had to follow the original burial order, step by step, cautiously, to avoid any mistake that could bring catastrophic consequences. Especially since the ancestral tombs of the Trung family had been tampered with by someone. I had to be even more careful. Who knew whether that person had set additional tricks or traps? Therefore, each time a coffin was unearthed, I personally inspected it. Just then, Trung Van Zhao rushed toward me, her face full of anxiety. "Master Wu, something's wrong. My father's gone mad. The butler just called, saying he's smashing everything in the house. And his voice changed. It sounds like a woman's." Hearing that, my heart clenched tight. At once, I thought of the resentful skull we had dug up earlier from the white wooden box. Back then, a surge of black energy had struck Trong Nok Thang's face. Although I'd managed to extract most of the malignant aura from his body, apparently some residual still remained. Now that he had suddenly gone insane, speaking with a woman's voice, it could only mean the skull belonged to a woman. I couldn't waste another second. "Miss Trung, I'll go back with you. This matter is not something you can handle alone." "But what about the relocation work?" she asked, worried. "Leave it for now. We'll continue once I return." "All right," Trung Van Zhao nodded. Before leaving, I turned to Uncle Hu. "Stay here and watch over the workers. Wait for me to return before continuing the digging. Understand?" Uncle Hu nodded. "Don't worry, young master." Even so, I still felt uneasy. I turned toward Trung Van Lung and said sternly, "Young Master Trung, I'll be gone for a while. You're in charge here. Remember, do not continue digging until I return." Yeah, got it." Trung Van Lung waved his hand, his eyes never leaving his phone. I was speechless. His father might be in danger, yet he couldn't even be bothered to ask a single question.
How can anyone be so utterly indifferent? Soon, Trung Van Zhao and I got into her car and sped toward the Trung mansion. She drove like the wind, and within half an hour we arrived. The moment we reached the gate, I sensed something was off. A heavy, oppressive yin aura enveloped the entire estate, sending a chill down my spine. The main gate was locked. Trung Van Zhao jumped out, pounding on it. "Uncle Wang, open the door! It's me, Van Zhao!" But after a long time, there was no response from inside. "Stop knocking," I said. "Something has happened." Then I stepped forward and kicked the door with all my strength. Crack! The wooden gate burst open. Trung Van Zhao stared at me in shock. She clearly hadn't expected I possessed such strength. The door had been bolted from within, yet a single kick shattered it completely. Though I appeared lean, years of training under my master had strengthened every muscle. Once the door was down, we stepped into the courtyard. A cold gust of wind swept through, raising goosebumps even on my skin. Trung Van Zhao trembled and instinctively clung to my arm. "Master Wu, why is it so cold here?" "Stay close to me. Don't fall more than 3 steps behind," I warned. She nodded nervously, pressing even closer. A faint, delicate fragrance rose from her, some subtle perfume, soothing, yet oddly out of place amid this eerie chill. We advanced to the main hall. As we neared, a sudden burst of female laughter echoed from inside, a chilling, ghostly cackle that froze us in place. "Why is there a woman's voice inside? Apart from Butler Wang and my father, there's no woman in the house," she whispered, her voice trembling. I didn't reply, only pushed the door, but it was locked tight from within. Without hesitation, I kicked again. Bang! The door flew open, and an icy wind poured out, carrying with it a faint metallic scent of blood. As the door swung wide, both Trung Van Zhao and I saw someone lying on the floor. Butler Wang. She screamed and rushed to him. I crouched down and examined his head, covered in blood, still bleeding, but thankfully he was alive, merely unconscious. Tearing a strip of his shirt, I quickly bandaged the wound. Before I could finish, the same eerie female laughter drifted from deeper inside, low and sinister, enough to make one's hair stand on end. Hearing that, Trung Van Zhao froze, gripping my hand tightly. "Master Wu, will my father be okay?" "Don't be afraid. I'm here." Rising, I led her toward the source of the laughter. It came from the bedroom. When we reached the door, the sight before us made even me shudder. Trung Ngoc Thang sat before an old dressing table, back to us, brushing his hair, his movements graceful, almost feminine. Each stroke of the comb was accompanied by that same haunting laughter. Above his head swirled a faint black mist. He was clearly possessed. "Father!" Trung Van Zhao cried, trembling, but Trung Ngoc Thang showed no reaction. "Wicked spirit! How dare you! Show yourself!" I shouted. Slowly, Trung Ngoc Thang rose to his feet and turned around. Both Trung Van Zhao and I gasped. "Damn it!" His face was painted with thick white powder. His lips were a garish red. He looked exactly like a paper effigy from a funeral shop. Grotesque, lifeless, terrifying. The combination of his eerie makeup and the chilling aura in the room made the scene unbearable to behold. He took 2 steps forward, swaying his hips delicately, and let out a coquettish laugh. "Tell me, am I beautiful?" I shot back between gritted teeth. "Am I beautiful?" Hearing that, his painted lips curled upward in a mournful smile, tears welling up in his eyes. "If I am so beautiful, why did you abandon me?" His voice grew more sorrowful, filled with despair and resentment. If it had been a true woman speaking, I might have felt pity, but this was Trung Ngoc Thang in a woman's guise. It was grotesque, revolting. A sudden realization flashed through my mind. The female spirit possessing him must be the owner of that resentful skull. But why ask that question? "You," I snapped. "You desecrated the Trung family's ancestral tombs. What grudge do you bear against them? Why use your skull to curse their line?" Judging from the skull's aura, she had died unjustly, her spirit bound by deep hatred. Whoever killed her must have buried her remains here as a tool for vengeance. My mind raced, but there was no time for thought. A possession like this could kill if not handled immediately. Without hesitation, I shoved Trung Ngoc Thang aside and rushed forward, my fingers forming the demon-slaying seal. "Heaven and earth without bounds! Cosmic dispersal technique!" I roared, striking him squarely in the chest. A shriek tore from Trung Ngoc Thang's throat as his body was hurled backward, black mist dispersing around him. Though my master had mainly taught me geomancy, he had also instructed me in exorcism. One must defend oneself when confronting the supernatural. The entity inside him was gravely injured, retreating a few steps, glaring at me with eyes full of hatred. yet even wounded, it refused to leave his body. I couldn't let it recover. I charged again, sealing another incantation and striking downward, but this time the spirit evaded me, darting left and right. I struck several more times, all misses, until it suddenly fled toward the living room. This wasn't working. I needed to end it fast. The ancestral tomb still awaited me. Then I remembered the talisman my master had left me, the lightning strike talisman. Against ordinary ghosts, it could obliterate them instantly. As the entity turned its back in the living room, I hurled the talisman. It stuck squarely on Trung Nok Thang's back. Blue lightning surged across his body. He collapsed with a scream as a dark shadow burst from him. I thought it was over, until the shadow swerved and plunged straight into Butler Wong's unconscious body. Moments later, the butler's form trembled. He sat upright and laughed in a woman's voice. My anger flared. "You've got to be kidding me. Just kicked you out of one body, now you crawl into another?" Worse, the spirit was powerful, so powerful that even my master's lightning strike talisman hadn't destroyed it. Its resentment must have been immense, its cultivation deep. I hadn't expected such a formidable foe. Without hesitation, I ran to Trung Nok Thang, pressed a protective charm on his chest. This would prevent the spirit from re-entering, then handed another to Trung Van Zhao. "Keep this against your heart. Don't let go." Terrified, she clutched it tightly. Only then did I face Butler Wang, my voice cold. "Had enough?" He laughed shrilly, the laugh of a woman. "Not yet. I'll slaughter the entire Trung family. And if you meddle, I'll kill you too." "Big words," I snarled. "Watch you don't bite your tongue." Fury burned inside me. I spread one hand, tracing a fiery sigil with the other. Golden light flared, the lightning charm. I lunged forward. Possessed, Butler Wang's strength had multiplied. He seized a chair and hurled it at me. I barely dodged as it shattered on the floor. Then he grabbed whatever he could, vases, dishes, anything, and threw them wildly. No time to think, I charged straight at him. A teacup smashed into my forehead, pain seared through me, tears nearly springing to my eyes, but I kept going. Reaching him, I grappled him to the ground, slammed my palm, still blazing with the sigil, onto his head.
Trung Gok Thang, a man over 50, was now made up like a woman, his lips a deep crimson, as if stained with blood, his face covered in a thick layer of white powder. The scene looked no different than a paper effigy in a funeral shop. Even worse, he twisted his body gracefully, pressing his fingers delicately together, striking feminine poses as he swayed and walked toward me and Trung Van Zhao. Seeing her father like this, Trung Van Zhao was so terrified that her whole body shook. Instinctively, she pressed close to me. When he was only 3 or 4 steps away, Trung Gok Thang suddenly curved his lips in a ghastly smile and asked in a coquettish tone, "Do you think I'm beautiful?" I smirked coldly. Beautiful, indeed. At those words, his eyes grew resentful and tearful, so pitiable that one could almost feel sorry for him. "If I am so beautiful, then why did you abandon me?" His voice grew increasingly plaintive. If there had been a real young woman standing before me, perhaps I might have felt a pang of sympathy. But seeing Trung Gok Thang in that state only made me think of a rotting flower, utterly disgusting. Then a thought flashed through my mind. Could this female spirit be the very owner of the grievance skull we had dug up earlier? Why was she asking such a question? "You set a formation to destroy the feng shui of the Trung ancestral tomb? What grudge so deep do you bear against them that you used a woman's skull for the curse? Judging from the condition of that bone, she must have died wrongfully, carrying tremendous resentment. Most likely, the one who murdered her took her skull and buried it in the Trung family grave as a yin anchor. If that was true, the perpetrator's cruelty was beyond measure." These thoughts spun rapidly in my head, but there was no time to dwell on them. Being possessed by a ghost can have grave consequences, at worst, death, at best, lifelong illness, depending on how long it stays and how strong it is. I could not hesitate.
I shoved Trung Von Zhao aside and rushed straight at Trong Gok Thang, my hand still locked in the ghost-slaying mudra, and struck down hard. Heaven and earth infinite, great cosmic dispersal technique. Trong Gok Thang let out a piercing scream. His whole body was blasted backward, the black miasm around him instantly fading a little. Although I had mainly studied Feng Shui under my master these past years, that did not mean I knew nothing of exorcism arts. When one deals with graves and geomancy, encounters with spirits and demons are unavoidable. For self-defense, I had learned a few methods of banishment. The female spirit inside Trong Gok Thang was seriously injured by my first blow, and looked at me in terror, yet even so, she did not withdraw from his body. I could not let her recover. I charged again, forming another seal and striking down with force. This time, however, the ghost was ready. She dodged, twisting Trong Gok Thang's body from side to side to avoid my attack. I struck several times, but hit nothing. She took the chance to flee straight into the living room. This could not go on. I had to end it quickly, for the family grave still waited to be handled. Thinking thus, I secretly took from my robe a talisman, the Thundercloud charm, left to me by my master. Its power formidable. Against ordinary ghosts, a single strike would reduce them to ash. As soon as the spirit turned its back while driving Trong Gok Thang through the room, I flung the charm toward him. It slapped on his back. Instantly, a blue light raced across his body, and he collapsed face first to the floor. A horrific scream rang out as a stream of black gas shot from his body. Yet to my shock, after wriggling in the air for a moment, that black mist darted straight into the body of Butler Wong, who lay unconscious on the ground. He had earlier been struck on the head and was still faint, but the moment the miasm entered him, his body trembled violently, and then he suddenly sat up, staring at me and laughing wildly. Seeing that, my blood boiled. Was this a joke? I had just driven it out of Trong Gok Thang, and now it had jumped into Butler Wong? Was this to go on endlessly? Even more disturbing, this ghost was incredibly strong. The Thundercloud charm my master left me had failed to disperse its spirit. Still, it had energy to fight. Its resentment must be immense. The greater the resentment, the stronger the cultivation, and the harder it is to overcome. I had not expected my first real battle to be against such a formidable enemy. Seeing Butler Wong sit up, I did not attack immediately, but hurried to Trong Gok Thang's side, took out a protective talisman, and pressed it on his chest so the ghost could not return to him. Then I ran to Trung Von Zhao and handed her another charm. Keep this on your chest and stay close to me. She was so terrified that her hands trembled as she took it and quickly hid it inside her clothes. Only then I turned back to Butler Wong and said coldly, "Have you made enough trouble yet?" Just like before with Trong Gok Thang, Butler Wong burst into a woman's shrill laughter. "Not yet. I want the entire Trung family dead. And if you dare interfere, I'll kill you too." So arrogant. Careful you don't bite your tongue. Today, I'll scatter your soul to dust. This female spirit had completely angered me. I raised one hand while drawing a light-filled lightning sigil in the other. Golden radiance flared as the lightning talisman formed. I charged straight at Butler Wong. Once possessed, his strength became inhuman. He snatched up a chair and swung it at me. I barely dodged. It smashed to splinters on the floor. Then he grabbed whatever was within reach and hurled it at me like a storm of flying objects. I had no time to think and simply rushed in through the barrage. A teacup struck my forehead so hard I almost cried from the pain, but I gritted my teeth and kept going, tackling him to the ground. With the hand that held the sigil, I slammed my palm on the top of his head.
Chapter 46. Someone will die. The moment my hand pressed down, Butler Wong's body began to tremble violently, as if struck by a high fever. Within seconds, a stream of dark mist burst out from his chest and shot straight toward Truong Van Zhao, who was standing a short distance behind me. Truong Van Zhao could not see the filthy thing, but she suddenly felt a chilling cold spread through her whole body. Yet just as the dark mist was about to reach her, it suddenly shrank back as though it had touched something terrifying, instantly turning around and darting straight out the door before vanishing from sight. Because of the teacup that had hit my forehead earlier, the throbbing pain distracted me so much that I didn't have time to strike and capture it. When I finally stopped moving, the pain on my forehead grew worse. Reaching up to touch it, I found a huge bump swelling there. The cup had hit me so hard it shattered completely. I took a deep breath, then drew another talisman from my robe, pressing it against Butler Wong's chest before collapsing onto the floor, breathing heavily. Finally, the filthy thing was gone. Truong Van Jiao, now regaining her senses, rushed to my side, her voice trembling with concern. "Master No, you're hurt. Are you all right?" She gently dabbed the blood from my forehead with a tissue. Thankfully, the wound was not serious, just a bit bruised. As she sat beside me, her face close, I couldn't help but notice how beautiful she was. "I'm fine. It's just that filthy energy from the cursed bone we dug up earlier. I fear this thing won't stop here." Truong Van Jiao looked pained, her voice soft. "Master Ngo, you've suffered so much because of our family." I shook my head. "No matter. When one accepts payment, one must solve the trouble that comes with it. That is my duty." We were still speaking when a faint groan came from the far side of the room. Truong Muk Thang, who had been lying near the door, slowly stirred awake. His body was weak, his eyes unfocused as he sat up. "Why am I lying here? What happened?" he asked groggily. His daughter rushed over. "Father, the butler called me saying something had happened to you. I came back from the ancestral tomb with Master Ngo, and when we arrived, you were possessed by a female ghost. It was Master Ngo who helped drive her away." Truong Mukthang looked doubtful, glancing from his daughter to me. He remembered nothing. After all, when possessed, one's consciousness is buried deep within, unable to recall anything afterward. I asked calmly, "Mr. Truong, before we arrived, do you remember what happened? Anything strange?" Truong Mukthang frowned, thinking. "After we came back from the tomb, we all had dinner together. Once everyone returned to the gravesite, only I and Butler Wong stayed home. I felt dizzy from high blood pressure, so I lay down to rest. Not long after, I felt as if a woman was sitting beside me, whispering something, but I couldn't hear clearly. Then, nothing." Hearing this, I nodded slowly. When the black energy struck his face earlier, I hadn't managed to purge it completely. That must be why this happened. But from everything I had seen, the female spirit trapped in that cursed skull bore a deep grudge against the Truong family. She had sworn to make them all die in torment. There is no hatred without a cause, no love without a reason. That ghost woman sought revenge. The Truong family must have wronged her somehow. I fixed my gaze on Truong Mukthang. "Mr. Truong, I need you to be completely honest with me. Have you offended anyone recently, especially a young woman? If you don't tell the truth, I won't be able to help you." Truong Mukthang grew anxious. "Master No, I swear I haven't offended anyone, let alone a woman. Heaven and earth can witness. I'm not lying." His expression seemed genuine. I could not sense deceit, but something didn't add up. At that moment, my phone rang. It was Uncle Hu calling. As soon as I answered, his panicked voice burst through the receiver. "Young master, there's big trouble. Truong Van Leung won't listen. He's forcing the workers to keep digging. He says he wants to finish exhuming all the coffins tonight. They've already started." My heart tightened. "Why didn't you stop him? If they keep digging, something terrible will happen," I shouted. Uncle Hu's voice was trembling. "We all tried to stop him, but that brat says it's his family's business, that outsiders like me have no right to interfere. He said he doesn't have time to waste and just wants to finish quickly." "Uncle Hu," I barked, "you must stop them at any cost. The corpses buried in that yin tomb aren't ordinary. If anything goes wrong, someone will die." My chest burned with anger. I nearly cursed aloud. That spoiled brat, Truong Van Leung, he never fails to make trouble. I had only left for a short while, and he had already brought disaster upon us. "I'll try to stop them," Uncle Hu said. "But hurry, young master, the situation is getting out of control. The boy even promised to pay the workers more if they dig faster. They've all started." "Understood. I'm coming right now." I hung up and turned to Truong Van Jiao. "We have to go. Drive me to the ancestral grave, quickly." Truong Vukthang, who had overheard Uncle Hu's loud voice, went pale. "Was that brat Truong Van Leung causing trouble again?" "Trouble? He's practically committing murder," I snapped. "We need to get there immediately." Truong Mukthang slammed his fist on the table, his voice trembling with rage. "That ungrateful wretch! Why did I ever give birth to such a son? If I'd known he'd become like this, I should have strangled him the moment he was born." He tried to stand, but his body was still weak from the possession. He could barely move.
Mr. Truang, please stay. Truang Van Zhao and I will go. I dashed toward the courtyard with her, but as soon as we reached the gate, a wave of dizziness struck me. My heart beat wildly, and the world spun before my eyes. A groan escaped my lips as my body collapsed to the ground. Master No! Master No, what's wrong? Truang Van Zhao's voice echoed near my ear, but it grew fainter, fading into a blur. My consciousness sunk into darkness. In that dimness, I saw the image of an eight-tailed fox appearing in my mind. The fox shimmered, then transformed into a breathtakingly beautiful woman. She looked at me with solemn eyes and said softly, "Don't go."
Chapter 47. The compass turns. Great omen arises. Throughout my life, the eight-tailed fox had not appeared for a very long time. My master had long known that within my body resides such a celestial being, but years ago, during her tribulation, she was gravely wounded, her spirit weakened, and had to take refuge inside me to recover. During the years I cultivated under my master's guidance, I went through several tribulations, yet each time I survived safely. I knew it was because my master had borne those disasters for me. Since that day, the eight-tailed fox had never shown herself again. Every time I faced peril, this celestial spirit would manifest to help me pass through the ordeal. But just as I stepped out of the courtyard, dizziness overwhelmed me. The world spun, and I fell heavily to the ground. The eight-tailed fox appeared, transforming into an ethereal woman of peerless beauty. With a solemn face, she said to me, "Do not go." Clearly, she had foreseen great danger ahead, and came only to warn me. Fortunately, the trance did not last long. After a few minutes, I regained full consciousness. When I opened my eyes, Chuang Van Zhao was kneeling beside me, her expression full of worry, her eyes almost in tears. "Master Ngo, you're awake. What happened to you?" she asked anxiously, biting her lip. I quickly steadied my breath and replied, "I'm fine. Let's go." Then I tried to stand, but dizziness struck again, and I nearly fell. Chuang Van Zhao hurriedly stepped forward, guiding my arm onto her shoulder. "Master Ngo, let me support you." Never in my life had I held any woman close, and when my arm slipped around Chuang Van Zhao, I couldn't help feeling awkward. Yet my head was spinning violently. There was no room for modesty. "Master Ngo, what happened just now?" she asked again, not realizing my discomfort. "It's nothing," I said, "probably just dizzy from that teacup hitting my head. Hurry, drive to the ancestral tombs. We may already be too late." "Master Ngo, can you really travel in your condition?" she asked, voice trembling. "I'm fine. Even if the sky falls, I have to go. Others may not care, but Uncle Hu is like family to me." My tone was firm. There was no other choice. If I didn't go, the laborers hired by the Churong family and Chuang Van Luong himself might die. I couldn't care less whether Chuang Van Luong lived or died, but Uncle Hu was still there. He had watched me grow up, closer than kin. I could not lose him. As soon as I got into the car, I urged Chuang Van Zhao to drive faster. Sitting in the passenger seat, I was restless, my heart heavy. If something truly happened, the consequences would be disastrous. I recalled my master's teachings. In a dragon-tiger corpse yin ground, danger always lurks. 9 coffins align with heaven's stems and earth branches. When one is opened, the gate of ghosts yawns wide. A corpse yin ground is an extremely rare Feng Shui formation. Bodies buried there do not decay for thousands of years, and the site blesses the descendants with fortune. But moving the coffins must follow a precise sequence, one by one, at exact times. A single mistake will disrupt the energy field of the entire grave, and catastrophic events may follow. Chuang Van Liang simply wanted to finish digging quickly, so he could rest. The moment I left, he ordered the laborers to continue excavating, unaware of the peril. When Chuang Yu Chang fell ill earlier, I rushed back without giving further instructions. I assumed Uncle Hu would manage everything safely. I never expected Chuang Van Liang's arrogance to run so deep. Now even the celestial fox within me had appeared to stop me. Clearly, something terrible had already happened. I sat restlessly as Chuang Van Zhao spoke beside me, but her words barely reached my ears. The ancestral cemetery of the Chuang family wasn't far. After half an hour of speeding, we arrived. She stopped the car, I flung open the door and stepped out, and she followed close behind. As soon as we neared the graves, I sensed something was terribly wrong. A heavy miasma of killing qi blanketed the entire area. The air was unnaturally still. No sound of insects, no rustle of leaves. The silence itself was frightening. I halted immediately, turned to Chuang Van Zhao, and said in a low voice, "Stay close to me. It's not safe here." "Master Ngo, you've run back and forth for my family, even got hurt. I feel truly guilty," she murmured apologetically. I gave a faint smile. "It's fine. If you feel bad, tell your father to pay me extra when this is over." Zhuang Vanzhao nodded earnestly. "No problem." Then she moved even closer, her hand slipping into mine as her eyes scanned the darkness nervously. Before long, we reached the Zhuang ancestral ground. As I feared, it was completely deserted. No trace of a single person, only coffins recently unearthed, scattered chaotically across the graveyard. "Where is everyone? Where did they go?" Zhuang Vanzhao asked confusedly. "Uncle Hu, it's me, Ngo Kep. Where are you?" I shouted loudly, but there was no answer. "Could my brother have taken everyone away?" she wondered. "Impossible," I said grimly. "Others might leave, but Uncle Hu would never abandon this place. I think they're in danger." Her face instantly went pale. They aren't hurt, are they? And my brother?" Despite all of Chuang Van Luang's arrogance, he was still her brother. I frowned, equally uneasy. How could everyone vanish in less than 2 hours? We had been away barely that long. I pulled out my compass to check the surrounding energy, but the moment it appeared, the needle began to spin wildly. My heart skipped a beat. The compass spins without direction? This is the sign of great calamity. I quickly pocketed it and drew another artifact, a measuring rod about 30 centimeters long, called the Heavenly Martial Ruler, or Tien Bung Sik. The square rod had 4 sides, each engraved with ancient talismans. According to old scriptures, peachwood branches ward off evil spirits, thus later generations forged tools of exorcism from peach wood. The Heavenly Martial Ruler was one such instrument. Some were made of peach wood, others of iron. All 6 faces bore carvings of the 28 constellations, the sun and moon talismans, and invocations to the northern and southern star generals. This relic had been passed down to me by my master. Holding it, I felt steadier inside. Just then, from near the Chuang family's ancestral graves, came a strange, muffled sound.
Chapter 48. The Corpse, Leaning Against the Tree. As soon as I heard that sound, I immediately became alert, my hand tightening around the Heavenly Martial Ruler. Carefully, I moved toward the source of the noise. Near the ancestral tombs of the Trong family was a small grove, only about a dozen meters away. The forest was lush and green, yet the area around the Trong ancestral graves was barren, without a single blade of grass, creating a striking contrast. That strange sound came from the forest. Trong Vanzhao stayed close behind me. I had to admit, this girl was quite brave, daring to follow me into the family graveyard in the middle of the night. Before long, we stepped into the small forest ahead. The moment we entered, we saw a faint golden light flickering in the darkness. Not long after, a bizarre sight appeared before our eyes. Ahead stood a man, shirtless, holding a red candle in his hand as he slowly walked toward a large tree. As he moved, he laughed foolishly, his laughter unnervingly eerie. Seeing that figure from behind, Trong Vanzhao gasped in shock. "That's my brother." I also recognized him. The man holding the red candle was indeed Trong Van Luing. But my heart was filled with confusion. What in the hell was this brat doing, shirtless, holding a red candle in the middle of the night? What on earth was he up to? I gestured for Trong Vanzhao to keep silent, then motioned for her to follow us as we trailed behind him to see what he was doing. We kept a distance of about 7 or 8 meters, quietly following his every move. After circling half the grove, what we saw made my hair stand on end. Beneath a large tree ahead, there was a corpse, leaning against the trunk. The person was dressed in mourning clothes, face pale as paper, without a doubt, a dead body. Judging from the funeral garments, it must have been one of the Trong ancestors whose remains had been exhumed from the ancestral tomb. But I couldn't understand why this corpse was here in the forest. What followed made our blood run cold. Trong Van Luing, still holding the burning red candle, lifted it toward the corpse's chin, using the flame to heat that area. Before long, the corpse's chin blackened, and drops of thick liquid slowly began to drip down. Trong Van Luing was melting corpse oil. That brat! What in the hell is this idiot doing? Whatever it was deadly dangerous. It could cost him his life. I had to stop him. "Do you still have the talisman I gave you?" I whispered. "Yes, I still have it." "Good. Stay here. Don't move. I'll save your brother."
Trung Van Jiao nodded quickly, but still clutched my arm tightly, trembling uncontrollably. She only realized it after a moment, her face flushing as she hurriedly let go. I drew the heavenly martial ruler and crept closer to Trung Van Luing. As I approached, the candlelight illuminated the corpse's face. It looked horrifying, its features dim and corpse-pale, eyes closed but menacingly still. When I was about 3 or 4 steps away, my heart suddenly froze. Maybe I was seeing things, but I could swear the corpse, leaning against the tree, had opened its eyes. Those eyes were white and glassy, staring straight at me. My body stiffened, my heart pounded wildly. The corpse, it's alive. I held my breath, unmoving. My pulse raced. After a few seconds, the corpse didn't move again, only its eyes remaining open. I let out a silent sigh of relief, steadied my breath, gathered energy into my lower abdomen, and shouted, "Trung Man Luing!" My shout cracked through the forest like thunder. It was a Taoist technique known as heavenly roar, used to force spirits out of the possessed. The instant my voice echoed, Trung Van Luing's body jerked violently, and he froze in place. Then, like a puppet, his head slowly turned toward me. When he fully faced us, I finally saw his face. His skin was slick, as though smeared with oil, his features twisted and feral, his eyes bloodshot, veins bulging, his throat guttering with animalistic growls. Seeing his face, my stomach dropped. There was no yin energy, no demonic aura. He wasn't possessed by a ghost. But if not, then what was controlling him? The next moment, Trung Van Luing hurled the red candle straight at me. I swung my arm to deflect it, sending it flying. But in that instant, he lunged, fast as a beast. Before I could react, he slammed into me, knocking me backward to the ground. The stench of decay poured from his body, thick and nauseating, like rotting flesh. I almost gagged. Worse, his strength was monstrous. He forced me down, both hands locking around my throat, strangling me with inhuman power. His growls were low and guttural, filled with murderous frenzy. I couldn't just lie there waiting to die. I still held the heavenly martial ruler. I swung it hard at him. This artifact was meant to suppress evil spirits. One strike should have crippled him. But when it struck Trung Van Luing's body, nothing happened, not even a flinch. And at that moment, from the corner of my eye, I saw the corpse, leaning against the tree, move.
Chapter 49. Mind Control. At that moment, Trung Van Luong tightened his grip around my neck even more. At first, I thought he was possessed by a ghost, so I struck him several times with the heavenly celestial ruler, but to my shock, the sacred artifact had absolutely no effect on him. It was then that I realized he wasn't possessed at all. If he truly had been overtaken by an evil spirit, the heavenly celestial ruler would have worked immediately. His hands tightened further, and I began to lose my breath. My lungs burned, and my vision darkened. He kept growling, feral and guttural like a wild beast. Saliva dripping from his mouth, nearly splattering onto my face. I jerked my head aside, disgusted to the point of wanting to vomit. Then I noticed something strange. In his bloodshot eyes, a faint white line ran across the pupil. That was the moment I understood. This was not possession, but mind control. Someone nearby was manipulating Trung Van Luong's body through dark sorcery. I had trained in martial arts since childhood under my master's guidance. My strength was not insignificant. Yet now I couldn't overpower him. The reason was clear. When one's mind is bound by sorcery, every ounce of strength in their body is forced to its limit. It's like when a drowning man grabs a rescuer, desperate, clinging with all his might, enough to pull even his savior under. Faced with life and death, survival instinct explodes into monstrous power. And now that power was crushing the air from my lungs. I was about to lose consciousness when Trung Van Jiao finally broke free from her panic. She picked up a rock from the ground, trembling as she stepped toward me. She raised it once, twice, but couldn't bring herself to strike. It was, after all, her own brother lying on top of me. She feared that one blow too strong could kill him instantly. Even in this desperate moment, she hesitated. With the last of my strength, I forced out a single word from my throat, choked and raspy. Hit! That one word gave her the courage she needed. She shut her eyes tight and swung the stone down with all her might. Her panic made her weak, so the blow wasn't hard, but even so, it landed squarely on his head. That small impact was enough. The jolt made Trong Van Luong's body spasm violently, and his hands loosened just enough for me to gasp for air. I drew in a deep breath and quickly formed a mudra, the external lion seal, chanting under my breath the Vajra Tathagata mantra. Then I gathered my remaining energy and slammed my palm into his chest. The blow sent him flying several meters away, tumbling across the ground. I rolled over, jumped to my feet, and rushed to him before he could rise again. Pressing my foot hard on his chest, I formed another seal, the external binding seal, reciting the same Tathagata incantation, then shouted, "Release!" This seal had the power to sense danger, pierce through illusions, and dissolve mental control. Since Trong Van Luong was clearly under someone else's domination, this was the only way to break the spell. I pressed the glowing seal directly on the center of his forehead. Immediately, his whole body convulsed violently, eyes rolled upwards, veins bulging. Then he collapsed flat on the ground, motionless. I had barely caught my breath when Trong Van Zhao screamed in horror, "Master Ung, the corpse is moving!" I turned sharply in the direction she pointed. The ancient corpse of the Trong ancestor leaning against the tree had opened its eyes, wide and ghostly pale, and from its gaping mouth spewed a cloud of thick black vapor. Its body began to tremble uncontrollably. As I stared, dread flooded through me. The corpse's teeth extended into long, jagged fangs, and its dry skeletal hands sprouted razor-sharp claws, 7 or 8 centimeters long, dark green and gleaming like tempered steel. My worst fear had come true. The cadaver buried for centuries within the Yin corpse land had transformed. Corpses in such grounds never rot for 1,000 years, but if disturbed, they are easily provoked into a corpse transformation. There were 2 likely causes. First, someone had tampered with the ancestral tomb. Second, when under mind control, Trong Van Luong had heated the corpse's chin with a red candle and smeared corpse oil onto his face, transferring his living energy into the dead body, igniting the change. My heart pounded violently. So this was why the 8-tailed fox spirit within me had warned me not to come. This place was a trap of death. But it was too late to retreat. If the corpse fully transformed into a Jiangshi, the consequences would be unimaginable. I shouted, "Miss Trong, run to the car! Wait for me there!" Then I grabbed the heavenly celestial ruler and charged toward the thrashing corpse. But before I reached it, the thing let out a deep, guttural roar and sprang upwards, leaping at me with monstrous speed. The stench that hit me was nauseating, the air thick with killing intent. The corpse moved by hopping, yet each bound covered 4 or 5 meters. Within a blink it was upon me. Its claws slashed downward, aiming to tear me apart. I swung the heavenly celestial ruler with all my might. The sacred artifact struck its shoulder with a heavy thud.
The corpse staggered back a few steps after being struck by the heavenly ruler, but it quickly regained balance. Its empty eyes glowed faintly red, its mouth opening to emit a shrill hiss that sent chills down my spine. The smell of decay thickened, swirling with a foul dampness that made it hard to breathe. I gritted my teeth, raising the heavenly ruler again, channeling the remnants of spiritual energy in my palms. The 8-sided ruler trembled faintly, emanating golden light that flickered like lightning in the darkness. "Return to dust," I shouted, bringing it down on the creature's skull. A sharp metallic clang rang out. The ruler struck its target, but instead of crushing it, sparks flew as if I had hit steel. My arm went numb from the recoil. "Damn it, its body's too tough," I muttered. In life, this being had been an ordinary human, yet after transforming into a corpse demon, nourished by yin energy and rancid qi for hundreds of years, its body had become harder than iron. The female corpse tilted its head, its mouth twisting into a grotesque grin. In the next second, it lunged again, impossibly fast. I barely rolled aside as its claw scraped the ground, carving deep furrows into the soil. Even a brief graze would have torn my flesh to ribbons. Behind me, Trong Van Gao screamed, her voice trembling. "Go Kep, watch out!" I didn't dare look back. "Stay away from here! Get in the car, now!" I roared, then swung the heavenly ruler in a sweeping arc to force the creature back. Its eyes flashed a ghastly blue. With a piercing screech, it leapt into the air and landed atop a nearby tombstone, crouching low like a predator ready to pounce. My breathing was ragged, my hands shaking slightly from exhaustion. The golden glow on the ruler dimmed. It had consumed nearly all my remaining energy. If I couldn't finish this quickly, both of us would die here tonight.
I closed my eyes for half a heartbeat, recalling my master's voice, "When the light wanes, borrow from heaven's flow." I bit my tongue hard enough to draw blood, spat it onto the ruler, and chanted, "Heaven and earth unite, divine thunder descend." The ruler blazed anew, crackling with golden arcs of electricity. The corpse screeched and leapt forward, claws outstretched. I met it head on, swinging the heavenly ruler with all my might. Die! The blow landed squarely on its chest. This time, the power of the thunder talisman within the ruler erupted. A blinding flash engulfed the graveyard, followed by an explosion that sent both of us flying. I crashed to the ground, coughing blood. The creature howled as its body burst into blue flames. The stench of burning flesh filled the air as it flailed violently, knocking over tombstones in its frenzy. I forced myself up on one knee, raising my hand to form a seal. Heavenly thunder seal, bind. Golden chains of light shot forth, wrapping around the writhing corpse. It shrieked once more before collapsing, flames consuming it until nothing but black ash remained. For a long moment, the only sound in the graveyard was the whispering wind. The starlight above seemed dimmer, as though heaven itself had witnessed this battle and fallen silent. I stood there panting, every muscle trembling, my vision blurred, but relief slowly washed over me. It was over, or so I thought. "No Kep," a weak voice called behind me. I turned to see Traung Van Gao staggering towards me, her face pale, eyes full of tears. "It's dead," I said softly. She nodded, her gaze drifting to the pile of ash. "Thank you. If not for you, my whole family—" Her voice broke before she could finish. I smiled faintly. "No need to thank me. This is what I'm supposed to do." But just as I was about to put the heavenly ruler away, the ashes on the ground shifted slightly. My heart froze. Impossible! The ashes began to pulse faintly, a dim red light glowing within. "Get back!" I shouted, pulling Traung Van Gao behind me. The ashes suddenly scattered into the wind, revealing something glinting beneath. A small black talisman, shaped like a human skull. The talisman floated upward, releasing an eerie hum. My pupils contracted sharply. A soul-locking seal. Someone sealed its spirit inside. Before I could react, the talisman exploded, releasing a wave of black smoke that surged skyward. Within the smoke, faint human faces screamed silently, twisting in agony. A cold, disembodied voice echoed across the graveyard. "You dare meddle in my design, boy?" My scalp prickled. This voice, it wasn't from the corpse. It was from the one who had orchestrated everything behind the scenes. "Who are you?" I demanded. The laughter that followed was chilling. "I am someone you can't afford to know. The debt of the Traung family must be repaid in blood. You've only delayed the inevitable." Then the smoke dispersed completely, leaving only silence behind. The graveyard felt heavier than before, as though a curse still lingered. I clenched my fists tightly. Whoever this was, they possessed power far beyond what I had imagined. "No Kep," Traung Van Gao's voice trembled. "Is it over?" I didn't answer immediately. My gaze fell on the spot where the talisman had vanished. "For now," I said at last, "but this isn't finished. Not yet." The cold wind howled through the graves, carrying faint whispers that sounded almost like laughter.
Chapter 51. The Breath of the Living and the Dead. At that very moment, the corpse that had been pinned beneath the heavenly command ruler let out a guttural roar and lunged upward once more, its movements even faster than before. I barely had time to react before its icy claws slashed toward my neck. A chill wind cut across my face, and I felt a few strands of hair fall to the ground. I stepped back quickly, swinging the heavenly command ruler in a wide arc. The sacred implement struck the creature's shoulder with a heavy crack, the sound echoing like breaking bones. However, the corpse didn't fall this time. It staggered slightly, then turned its head toward me. Its eyes were blood red, the pupils almost invisible, its mouth stretching into a hideous grin that exposed 2 rows of jagged black teeth. My heart trembled. This thing had already advanced to the stage of a feral corpse. Its body no longer decayed, and now it possessed awareness. Once a corpse reached this state, its strength could match 10 men combined. The heavenly command ruler alone would not be enough to subdue it. I gritted my teeth and pulled a talisman from within my robe, pressing my thumb into my palm until a drop of blood appeared, then flicked it onto the charm. By heaven's decree, seal evil, suppress the unclean, I shouted. The talisman ignited instantly, flames crackling with golden light. I hurled it straight at the creature's chest. The moment it made contact, the corpse let out a shriek so piercing it rattled my eardrums. Black smoke erupted from its body, but to my dismay, it still didn't fall. Instead, it raised its clawed hand and swiped through the air. The gust that followed was strong enough to nearly knock me off my feet. I rolled sideways, narrowly avoiding its next strike, and shouted over my shoulder, "Chuyang Vanjiu, don't stay here! Run!" She stood frozen several steps away, tears streaming down her face, too terrified to move. Seeing that she wasn't leaving, I cursed under my breath and turned my focus back to the corpse. There was no time to hesitate. If this continued, both of us would die here tonight. I took a deep breath and reached for the jade pendant my master had given me years ago, a talisman he had warned me never to use unless my life was in danger. It was said to contain the spiritual essence of a nine-tailed fox, sealed within to lend its strength to the bearer once. I clasped it tightly in my hand. The pendant grew hot, it burned my skin, and I could faintly hear a woman's whisper in my ear, soft, distant, yet unmistakably sorrowful. "Do not fear." In the next heartbeat, a surge of power coursed through my body. The corpse lunged at me again, but this time I met its attack head-on. My palm shot forward, striking the creature's chest with all the spiritual energy I could muster. "Heaven and earth as one, the command of the 8 trigrams, depart!" I roared. A deafening crack filled the air. Golden light exploded from the point of impact, engulfing both me and the corpse. When the light faded, I stumbled backward several steps, nearly falling. The creature, on the other hand, lay motionless on the ground. A thin trail of black smoke drifted upward from its mouth before dissolving into the night. I stood there panting, my chest heaving, sweat pouring down my back. My arm trembled violently from the recoil. Chuyang Vanjiu rushed over and caught my arm before I could fall. "No, Kip, are you all right?" she cried, her voice trembling. I wiped the blood from the corner of my mouth and forced a weak smile. "I'm fine. It's over." "Is it really dead?" she asked, glancing nervously at the corpse. "Don't go near it yet," I said. "Its yin energy hasn't completely dissipated. If you touch it now, you'll be contaminated." She nodded, stepping back quickly. I took a deep breath and knelt beside the corpse. It was already turning stiff again, the demonic energy that had animated it fading into nothingness. I retrieved the heavenly command ruler and pressed its edge lightly against the creature's forehead, murmuring a short incantation to seal what remained of its aura. Only then did I allow myself to relax. But the moment I lowered my guard, a sudden gust of wind blew across the cemetery. The trees around us swayed violently, and I felt a chill crawl up my spine. Something wasn't right. I turned sharply toward the burial ground. One of the remaining coffins, left unopened earlier, was trembling. The lid rattled as if something inside was pushing from within. My blood ran cold. "No," I muttered, "not another one." Chuyang Vanjiu's face went pale. What's happening?" "Someone must have disturbed too many graves," I said grimly. "The yin energy here is overflowing. If we don't suppress it soon, the entire graveyard will awaken." As I spoke, the trembling grew stronger. A low, guttural growl echoed from within the coffin. Then, crack! The lid burst open, and a withered hand shot out, claws glinting in the moonlight. I clenched my jaw and raised the heavenly command ruler once more. Looks like the night's not over yet.
Chapter 52. Someone will die. The moment my palm struck Butler Wang's chest, his whole body convulsed violently as if struck by lightning. In an instant, a thick black mist burst out of him and shot straight toward Trong Vanjal, who was standing behind me. She couldn't see that filthy thing, only felt a freezing chill sweep through her. But when the black mist was about to touch her, it suddenly shrank back, as if it had brushed against something terrifying, then turned sharply, darted through the doorway, and vanished into the darkness outside. My forehead still throbbed from the teacup that had smashed against it earlier. Pain shot through my skull so sharply I could only wince and curse under my breath. When I touched the spot, I found a swollen lump as big as a walnut. The blow had been hard enough to shatter the cup to pieces. I took a deep breath, pulled another exercising talisman from my coat, and pressed it to Butler Wang's chest before collapsing onto the floor, gasping. Finally, that filthy spirit was gone. Trung Vanjal came to her senses and hurried to my side. "Master Ongu, you're hurt. Are you all right?" she said anxiously, dabbing at the blood on my wound with the tissue. Luckily, it wasn't serious, just a scrape. Sitting that close to her, I caught sight of her delicate face, beautiful even in fear. "I'm fine," I said. "It's just that the filth clinging to the cursed bone we dug up this afternoon is still acting up. I'm afraid it won't stop here." Trung Vanjal's eyes softened. "Master Ongu, you've suffered so much because of my family." I shook my head. "No matter. I took your father's money. It's my duty to rid your house of its misfortune." As we spoke, a faint groan came near the door. Trung Van Yong stirred and slowly regained consciousness, his face pale, eyes unfocused. He blinked, looked around in confusion, then pushed himself up. "Why am I on the floor? What happened?" Trung Van Jiao rushed to him. "Father, the butler called saying you were in danger, so I came back from the ancestral tomb with Master Ongu. When we arrived, you were possessed by a female ghost. Master Ongu exorcised her." Trung Yuk Chang blinked at her, then at me, disbelief clouding his eyes. He clearly remembered nothing. When someone is possessed, their own consciousness is buried deep inside. They can't recall what they've done. I asked calmly, "Mr. Trung, before we arrived, do you remember anything strange?" He frowned, thinking hard. "After we returned from the tomb, we had dinner together. When everyone went back to the cemetery, only I and Butler Wang stayed. My blood pressure was acting up. I felt dizzy and tired, so I lay down to rest. Not long after, I heard a voice, a woman whispering something I couldn't make out. Then nothing. The next thing I knew, I was here." I nodded silently. When the blast of black energy had struck his face at the grave, I must not have purged it completely. That lingering evil aura had allowed the spirit to find him again. Judging from what the ghost said, that she would torment the entire Trong family to death, there must be a deep hatred behind this haunting. There is no love without reason, no hatred without cause. If the Trong family had never wronged that woman, she would not have returned in vengeance. I looked straight into Trung Yuk Chang's eyes. "Tell me the truth. Have you offended anyone recently, especially a young woman? If you don't, I can't help you." Trung Yuk Chang waved his hands nervously. "Master Ongu, I swear I haven't wronged anyone, certainly not any woman. Heaven and earth can testify I'm not lying." His expression was too earnest to doubt. Then what was the real connection? My head throbbed with unanswered questions. At that moment, my phone rang. It was Uncle Hu. The moment I answered, his voice burst through the receiver. Panicked. "Young master, it's bad. Trong Van Yong wouldn't listen. He forced the workers to keep digging, said he wanted all the coffins unearthed tonight. They've already started." "Why didn't you stop them?" I shouted. "Something terrible will happen." Uncle Hu sounded helpless. "We all tried, but that brat said it was his family's affair, that outsiders like us should stay out of it. He said he was in a hurry to finish and go home. I swear we couldn't stop him." My heart pounded. "Uncle Hu, whatever it takes, stop them. The corpses buried in that yin ground are not ordinary. If a corpse transformation occurs, someone will die." I almost cursed aloud. Trung Van Leung, that spoiled fool. The moment I turned my back, he'd caused a disaster. "I'll head there right now," Uncle Hu said, voice trembling. "But hurry, things are out of control. The workers said Trung Van Leung offered them extra pay to keep digging." "I'm coming." I hung up and shouted to Trung Van Jal, "Get the car, we're going to the ancestral tomb." Trung Yuk Chang, hearing Uncle Hu's voice through the phone, went pale. "Has that boy caused trouble again?" "Trouble?" I snapped. "He's courting death. We have to stop him now." "That unfilial brat," Trung Yuk Chang cursed through clenched teeth. "Why did I ever father such a creature? If I'd known, I'd have strangled him at birth." He tried to stand, but his body was still weak from possession. His legs gave out beneath him. "Mr. Trung, stay here. You're too frail. I'll handle it with Miss Trung Vanjal," I said quickly. Trung Vanjal and I rushed toward the gate, but as soon as we stepped outside, a sudden dizziness overtook me. My heart began pounding wildly, vision spinning, and before I could steady myself, a low groan escaped my throat. I collapsed onto the ground. Master Ongu! Master Ongu! Trong Van Zhao's frightened voice echoed in my ears, fading fast. My consciousness blurred, and through the fog of half-dream, I saw a figure forming, a fox spirit with 8 long tails, radiant and terrifying. The 8-tailed fox turned into a stunning woman, her eyes filled with stern warning. She looked straight at me and spoke in a cold, clear voice. Do not go.
Chapter 53. The Blood Moon Rises Once More. The blood-red moon slowly rose above the horizon, bathing the desolate cemetery in a ghastly crimson glow. The graves seemed to breathe under that eerie light, each tombstone casting an unnaturally long shadow that stretched and twisted across the ground. The air was thick with the smell of damp earth and decaying leaves, a scent that clung to the skin like a curse. No Kiep stood motionless before the ancient grave mound, his face pale and expression grave. The faint glow of a talisman flickered in his hand, the only thing separating him from the suffocating darkness pressing in around him. Behind him, Truong Van Jiao clasped her hands together tightly, her eyes darting anxiously among the swaying shadows. "Master No, what is happening?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "The moon. It's turning darker." No Kiep did not reply. His gaze was fixed on the mound before him, where faint ripples of black mist began to stir, seeping from the soil like venom. "It's waking up," he said at last, his tone flat but heavy with warning. "Something buried here refuses to stay buried." A low rumble echoed beneath their feet, deep and hollow, as if something enormous were shifting underground. The ground trembled, dust cascading from the nearby tombstones. No Kiep's eyes narrowed. He pressed 2 fingers together, chanting under his breath. A sharp gust swept through the cemetery, snuffing out the lanterns one by one until only the red moon remained, its light distorted and trembling. Then the earth cracked open. From the gash in the ground rose a withered arm, its skin gray and stretched tight over bone. The hand clawed at the air, nails long and blackened, before grasping the edge of the pit and pulling upward. A corpse emerged, its face bloated, eyes rolled white, and lips drawn back in a ghastly grin. A corpse revived under the blood moon, No Kiep muttered, stepping forward, the talisman between his fingers bursting into golden flame. The creature hissed, recoiling, then lunged forward with terrifying speed. Truong Van Jiao screamed as No Kiep swung his arm, the blazing talisman striking the corpse square in the chest. A flash of light erupted, followed by a piercing shriek that cut through the night like steel. The corpse convulsed, smoke rising from its body, but it did not fall. Instead, it grabbed No Kiep's wrist, its grip cold and inhumanly strong. He felt the chill seep through his arm, biting into his bones. Teeth gritted, he twisted free and pressed another talisman against its forehead. "Heaven and earth boundless, divine thunder purges evil." The words boomed like thunder. Lightning crackled from his palm, engulfing the creature in blinding white. For a brief moment, the cemetery was filled with light, then silence. The corpse hung motionless, smoke curling from its body. Slowly, it crumbled into ash. No Kiep staggered back, his breathing ragged, face slick with sweat. He looked up at the blood-red moon, which still hung in the sky like an unblinking eye. "It's not over," he said quietly. "Something else is coming." Truong Van Jiao followed his gaze, her voice trembling. What do you mean?" "This moon," he whispered, "isn't just light, it's a signal." The wind shifted suddenly, cold and sharp, carrying with it the faint echo of laughter. A woman's laughter, distant yet chillingly familiar. No Kiep's expression darkened. He murmured, "She's here." The spirit bound to the Oan bone has not been destroyed. It merely changed hosts. Truong Van Jiao's face drained of color. "Then what should we do?" No Kiep closed his eyes, steadying his breath. "There's only one way, to find the true grave she was taken from. If her spirit isn't returned, she'll keep hunting until every last member of your family is dead." The blood moon loomed higher, its light deepening into a dreadful scarlet.
Somewhere beyond the graves, the laughter grew louder, mingled with the rustle of unseen movement. In that blood-lit darkness, Nokiep raised his final talisman, its paper trembling between his fingers. "If you want vengeance," he whispered to the unseen spirit, "then come and take it from me." The wind roared in answer, and the world plunged into chaos once more.
The night sky above Vingfeng was heavy with mist, and the moon was hidden behind a shroud of drifting clouds. I, No Keep, stood silently before the ancestral tombs of the Trong family, the air thick with dampness and the faint stench of decay. The soil was still fresh from where the coffins had been unearthed. Beside me, Trong Vong Jiao shivered slightly, her pale face reflecting the flickering light of the torches that surrounded the area. "We shouldn't be here anymore, should we?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "It feels like something is still here, watching us." I didn't answer immediately. My eyes followed the faint shimmer of talisman paper fluttering in the cold wind. "You're right," I finally said. "This place isn't quiet yet. Someone has set up a soul trap formation here, and the purpose is not just to kill, it's to imprison the spirits of your ancestors." As soon as the words left my mouth, a sudden gust of wind swept through the graves, extinguishing half the torches. The shadows seemed to pulse and shift across the earth. I knelt down and pressed my hand to the soil. Beneath the layer of dirt, I could feel a subtle vibration, an eerie hum like a pulse that did not belong to the living world. This energy," I muttered, frowning. "It's yin energy mixed with resentment. The formation isn't meant to harm the living directly. It's drawing spiritual power from the dead." Trong Vong Jiao's eyes widened. "You mean from my ancestors?" "Exactly. The one who set this up used an ancient branch of Feng Shui known as the soul binding path. It's a forbidden practice, one that manipulates both the land's veins and the souls buried within it." I took a breath, pulled out a copper compass from my pocket, and held it over the center of the grave mound. The compass needles spun wildly, faster and faster, until it suddenly stopped, pointing directly toward the northeast. "There," I said, my voice low, "the core of the formation." Without hesitation, I took a step forward, then another. Trong Vong Jiao followed close behind, clutching her coat tight. When we reached the northeast edge of the cemetery, the ground looked darker than the rest, almost as if soaked in ink. "Stay behind me," I warned. I formed a hand seal and whispered a short incantation my master had taught me. The air in front of me rippled faintly, and a thin black mist began to rise from the soil. What is that?" she stammered. "Soul energy, but not pure. It's been corrupted." I reached into my coat and pulled out the heaven-bound ruler, the sacred measuring rod my master, Li Xuantong, had left me before he vanished. Its engraved symbols glowed faintly with a warm golden hue. "Whoever did this was no ordinary practitioner," I continued. "They used human bones to mark the lines of the formation. Each bone anchors a spirit, preventing it from ascending." Trong Vong Jiao covered her mouth, horrified. "So, my ancestors? Their souls are trapped here," I said grimly. "If we don't break this tonight, they'll never rest." I slammed the heaven-bound ruler into the ground. Instantly, a piercing cry echoed across the cemetery, a sound that wasn't human. The mist thickened, coiling like serpents around the tombstones. Faces appeared within it, distorted and pale, their mouths opening and closing silently, as if gasping for air. Trong Vong Jiao screamed. "Don't look at them," I barked. "Those are illusions, echoes of the souls bound to this place." I pressed my palms together and began chanting rapidly, each word resonating with a faint vibration through the air. The symbols on the ruler flared brightly. The mist trembled. For a moment, it seemed to resist, like something was fighting back from beneath the earth. Then, without warning, the ground cracked open, releasing a wave of icy air that nearly knocked us off our feet. A black shadow shot up from the fissure, its form vaguely human, its face twisted beyond recognition. "The guardian spirit," I said between my gritted teeth. "It's the will of the formation itself."
The shadow lunged toward me, its hands reaching out like claws. I swung the ruler in a wide arc, striking its chest. A burst of golden light erupted, forcing it back with a shriek that could shatter bone. The torches around us reignited with ghostly blue flames, illuminating the tombstones in a pale glow. "Mo keep, behind you," Trong Vong Jiao cried. I turned just in time to see another shadow rising, this one smaller, quicker. I flipped a talisman from my sleeve and threw it. The paper stuck to the shadow's face and burst into light, tearing it apart in a flash. "We can't fight it here," I said quickly. "The formation feeds on the energy of the dead. Every minute we stay, it gets stronger." I grabbed Trong Vong Jiao's wrist and pulled her toward the car. But as we ran, I felt the earth tremble again. The graves began to shift, and faint moaning sounds echoed all around. I looked back once and froze. A dozen spectral figures were emerging from the ground, their hollow eyes fixed on us. "Too late," I muttered, the formation's awakening its sentinels. Trong Vong Jiao stumbled, nearly falling. I caught her, but the movement slowed me down. The nearest ghost reached out, its cold hand brushing my arm. For an instant, I saw flashes of memories, battlefields, fire, a woman screaming in anguish. Then it was gone. My heart pounded wildly. "Keep moving," I shouted. We sprinted the last few meters to the car. I shoved her inside first, then slammed the door behind me. My hands shook as I started the engine, but before I could shift gears, something hit the windshield. A black handprint, pulsing like a living thing. "Damn it," I hissed. "They've marked us." I reached into my coat for another talisman, pressed it against the dashboard, and whispered, "By the order of heaven and earth, by the name of Li Xuantong, let all evil disperse." The talisman burned with white flame, and the handprint vanished. The mist began to fade. The moaning stopped. For a brief moment, silence returned to the night. Trong Vong Jiao turned toward me, her voice barely a whisper. "Is it over?" I stared at the fading cemetery through the windshield. "No," I said slowly. "The formation's broken for now, but whoever set it will know we interfered." I put the car into gear and drove off into the darkness. Behind us, the last torch flickered and died.
The night sky was shrouded in eerie silence. Only the faint sound of the wind rustling through the pine trees echoed around the old cemetery. I stood at the edge of the burial ground, the air thick with an invisible tension that pressed down on my chest. The yin energy here had grown even heavier since the last time I came. The faint scent of decay, mixed with damp earth, made it hard to breathe. Truong Van Jiao stood behind me, holding a flashlight tightly, her face pale. "Master Nungo, why does it feel so cold tonight?" she whispered. I didn't answer immediately, simply raised my compass and watched as the needle spun wildly, unable to settle on any direction. "The magnetic field here is in chaos," I said quietly. "Someone or something has disturbed the Feng Shui again." At that moment, a faint movement came from one of the graves nearby. My hand instinctively tightened around the talisman in my sleeve. The soil trembled slightly, then split open, revealing a pale, skeletal hand reaching upward. Truong Van Jiao gasped, nearly dropping the flashlight. I moved swiftly, pulling her back. "Stay behind me!" I shouted. The hand clawed at the air, then another followed, and slowly a figure began to rise from beneath the earth. Its flesh was grayish, clinging tightly to bone, the empty sockets of its eyes glowing faintly with blue light. "A yin corpse. It's begun to manifest again," I muttered under my breath. Ever since the disturbance at the ancestral tomb, the balance between yin and yang had been broken. Even though I had sealed the area once before, someone had deliberately reopened the grave, and now the consequence of that act was standing right before us. I pulled out a charm from my pouch, flicking it toward the corpse. The paper ignited in midair with a burst of golden flame, sticking onto the corpse's forehead. It let out a low, guttural growl, stumbling backward as smoke rose from its flesh. "Master Nongo, what is happening?" Truong Van Chao asked, trembling. "Someone has been practicing forbidden corpse arts here," I replied coldly. "The dead are being controlled, used as tools for revenge." Just then, a cold laugh echoed from the darkness ahead. The sound was sharp and chilling, like a woman's laughter carried on the wind.
Truing Van Zhao clutched my arm. That voice, it's the same as before, the ghost that possessed my father. I narrowed my eyes. She's still here. The laughter grew louder, circling us like a predator stalking its prey. I spread my senses, feeling the flow of energy around me. She's using the corpse as a medium, I said through gritted teeth, trying to resurrect her resentment through it. The corpse suddenly lunged forward again, its mouth wide open, releasing a foul stench that made my stomach churn. I drew the heaven-subduing ruler from my belt and swung it down. The strike landed squarely on its chest, sending it flying several meters away. It hit the ground with a dull thud, but didn't stop moving. From the shadows, a faint, feminine figure began to appear, her hair disheveled, her clothes soaked in blood, her eyes empty yet filled with hatred. It was the same face I'd seen in my dreams, the woman from the Oncourt, the resented bone. "Non Kep," she hissed, her voice echoing like wind over tombstones. "Why do you protect them? That family deserves to die." I stood my ground. "Whatever their sins, vengeance through the dead is an abomination," I said firmly. "You disturb the balance of yin and yang. Return to where you belong." The spirit's laughter turned to a scream. "Belong? They buried me alive. They deserve eternal torment." Her voice rose, and with it, the corpse on the ground began to move again, faster this time, its limbs twitching like a puppet. I knew she was channeling her resentment through it. "Truing Van Zhao, step back," I shouted. Then I formed a seal with my fingers and chanted, "Heaven and earth without limit, celestial thunder command, disperse the filth of 10,000 evils." A surge of spiritual energy burst from my palm, striking the corpse. The light illuminated the entire cemetery, momentarily tearing through the darkness. The spirit screamed as her image began to distort. "You can't stop me, Non Kep. I will return again and again," she howled. I gritted my teeth and threw the final talisman into the air. "By the authority of the 5 thunders, I command, depart." A flash of lightning split the sky, striking the talisman as it exploded into a burst of golden light. The corpse convulsed, then fell limp. The spirit let out one last ear-piercing scream before dissolving into wisps of black smoke that scattered into the wind. For a long moment, there was silence. Only the sound of Truong Van Zhao's breathing broke the stillness. She slowly stepped forward, her eyes wide. Is it over?" she asked softly. I looked at the burned patch of earth where the spirit had vanished. "For now," I said quietly. "But resentment that deep never truly dies. Someone has been feeding it, keeping it alive." She frowned. "Feeding it? You mean a living person?" I nodded. "Yes. Whoever orchestrated this didn't just want revenge, they wanted to harness her power." That thought sent a chill down my spine. Someone out there was manipulating both the living and the dead for their own purpose, and from the growing imbalance of energy I could feel in the air, this was only the beginning. I looked up at the dark horizon, the faint red glow of dawn beginning to emerge. We need to find the one behind this, before more blood is spilled. Truing Van Zhao nodded silently. The wind blew once more across the graves, scattering ashes into the air. Somewhere in the distance, faint laughter echoed again, so soft it might have been imagined, but I knew better. The resentment hadn't ended, it was merely waiting.
Chapter 56. Someone will lose their life. The moment I pressed down, Butler Wang's entire body began to tremble violently, as if caught in a fever. In just a few seconds, a dark mist burst forth from within him, shooting toward Truong Van Zhao, who was standing not far behind me. She couldn't see the filthy thing, only felt an icy chill sweeping through her body. But as the black mist approached her, it suddenly recoiled, as if it had touched something terrifying, then darted away, rushing straight toward the doorway before vanishing into thin air. Because my forehead was still throbbing from the porcelain cup that had smashed into it earlier, I was in too much pain to react in time to capture it. When I finally caught my breath, the pain flared up even more. Reaching up to touch my forehead, I found a large lump already swelling there. The cup had hit me so hard it shattered to pieces. I drew in a deep breath,
took out another talisman from inside my robe, and pressed it firmly on Butler Wang's chest before sinking to the floor, gasping for air. At last, the filthy thing was driven away. Trong Van Jiao, finally regaining her composure, hurried over and knelt beside me, her face filled with concern. "Master Ong, you're hurt. Are you all right?" she said softly, pulling out a tissue and gently wiping the blood from my wound. Thankfully, it wasn't serious, just a surface cut. As she leaned closer, I looked at her face. It really was beautiful, delicate under the faint light. "I'm fine," I replied. "It's just the filth from the cursed bone we dug up earlier today. I'm afraid this thing won't stop here." Trong Van Jiao looked pained, her voice soft and sincere. "Master Ong, you've gone through so much because of my family's troubles." "It's nothing," I said. "When one takes payment, one must resolve the calamity. That's the duty of a geomancer." We were still talking when a faint groan sounded in the distance. Trang Yok Tong, who had been lying near the doorway, suddenly stirred. His body was weak, his eyes blinked open in confusion. He slowly sat up. "Why am I lying here? What happened?" "Father!" Trong Van Jiao cried, rushing to his side. "The butler called me earlier saying you were in danger, so Master Ong and I rushed back from the ancestral tomb. When we arrived, you were possessed by a female spirit. Master Ong drove her away and saved you." Trang Yok Tong looked at his daughter, then at me, disbelief clouding his face. Of course he couldn't remember. When possessed, one's consciousness is buried beneath the invading entity. There's no memory of what transpired. "Trong Shi," I said calmly, "before we arrived, do you recall anything that happened? Anything unusual?" He frowned, trying to remember. "After we returned from the tomb, we had dinner together. When everyone went back to the site, only I and Butler Wang stayed home. I felt dizzy from high blood pressure, so I went to rest. Not long after I lay down, I felt as if a woman was beside me whispering something, but I couldn't hear clearly. Then everything went blank." I nodded slowly. The moment that dark aura struck his face earlier, he had already been infected. I must not have fully cleansed the evil chi from his body, which led to this incident. Judging from what had just happened, the woman's cursed skull we unearthed earlier must have held a deep grudge against the Trong family. Her vengeful spirit had vowed to make them all die in torment. There is no love without a reason, and no hatred without a cause. If the Trong family hadn't wronged her somehow, she would never have gone to such extremes. I stared directly into Trong Yok Tong's eyes and asked solemnly, "Please tell me the truth. Have you offended anyone recently, particularly a young woman? If you don't tell me honestly, I can't help you." He became agitated at once. "Master Ong, I swear, I haven't offended anyone recently, let alone any woman. Heaven and earth be my witnesses. I'm not lying." His face showed no trace of deceit. Then where was the problem? I rubbed my temples, my head pounding. Just then my phone buzzed. It was Uncle Hu. I answered immediately, and his voice burst through the line, urgent and panicked. "Young master, we've got a serious problem. Trong Van Luong won't listen. He ordered the workers to keep digging, wants to unearth all the coffins in the ancestral tomb tonight. They've already started." "Why didn't you stop him?" I barked. "Something terrible will happen if they continue." "We all tried to stop him," Uncle Hu replied anxiously, "but he shouted that this was the Trong family's business and outsiders had no right to interfere. He said he was short on time and wanted to finish quickly before heading home. Uncle Hu, you must stop them at all costs. The corpses buried in that yin grave are no joke. If a corpse transformation occurs, someone will die." I was so furious and nearly cursed out loud. That spoiled brat Trong Van Luong, he never fails to make trouble. I'd only been gone a short while and he'd already stirred up chaos. "I'll do everything I can to hold them off," Uncle Hu said, his voice strained. "But you need to get here right now. Things are getting out of hand. The boy promised the workers extra pay and forced them to keep digging." "Understood. I'm coming right now." Hanging up, I turned to Trong Van Jiao. "We need to go. To the ancestral tomb. Fast." Trang Yok Tong had overheard enough of the call to turn pale. "Was that Van Luong? That damn boy again?" "He's not just causing trouble," I said grimly. "He's courting death. I have to go stop him." Trang Yok Tong tried to rise, but staggered. His body was still weak after the possession. "Sir, you can't go. You're too frail. Let me and your daughter handle this." Without waiting for his reply, I rushed out with Trong Van Jiao, but as soon as we reached the gate, a wave of dizziness hit me hard. My heartbeat quickened unnaturally. My vision blurred. A soft groan escaped my lips before I collapsed to the ground. "Master Ong? Master Ong! What's wrong?"
Trong Van Zhao's voice echoed in my ears, faint and distant. My consciousness slipped away, and within that darkness, a vision appeared, a fox spirit, with 8 flowing tails, shimmering in light. The 8-tailed fox slowly took the form of a stunning woman. She gazed at me sternly and whispered, "Don't go."
Chapter 57. Everything was strange. I had to admit that Uncle Huz's composure was unmatched. Even in a situation like this, he could still fall asleep, and right in a graveyard at that. But I could somewhat understand it. He had been trapped by the spirit-locking formation I'd cast, wandering around and around without being able to get out. Saying he had walked 100 kilometers might be an exaggeration, but several dozen would not be far from the truth. I spoke sternly. "Uncle Ha, stop sleeping! Get up now!" The gravity in my tone made him open his eyes lazily and sit up, still looking exhausted. Yet the moment he fully regained his senses and looked around at the ancestral burial ground of the Trung family, especially when he saw the workers lying scattered unconscious on the ground, he suddenly froze, leaping to his feet as though he had just remembered something terrible. His face turned pale, his voice trembling. "Young master, someone died, didn't he?" I sighed. "Almost. If I'd come half an hour later, there would have been more than one dead body." I wasn't exaggerating. When I arrived, Trung Van Luong had already driven a corpse into transformation. If I hadn't stopped him in time, he surely would have lost his life. And those laborers who'd been sealed inside the coffins, most likely their life energy had already been drained away by the corpses. If that had gone on, not a single one of them would have survived. Hearing this, Uncle Huz's face went ashen. He slapped his thighs in remorse and muttered, "Heavens, it's all my fault. I nearly caused a catastrophe." "After you left, what exactly happened?" I turned to him and asked. "When you and Miss Trung left, you told us to wait until you came back before moving another inch of soil. Everything was fine at first, no one touched anything, but a while later, Trung Van Luong suddenly walked into the small forest, saying he needed to relieve himself. When he came back, he was a different person. He insisted the workers resume digging. I stepped forward to stop him, saying we had to wait for your return before breaking ground, but he was like a man possessed, kept shouting orders, even promised double wages. Those workers are all hired by the Trung family. Of course they listened to him, not to me, an outsider. The moment they heard double pay, they ignored me and just kept working. I was furious and stepped in front of them, and that's when the fighting started." "And then?" I frowned. I knew Uncle Huz's strength well. No matter how sturdy those laborers were, they were no match for him. Even 7 or 8 men together could hardly lay a finger on him. "And then," he snorted irritably, "that brat Trung Van Luong saw me losing my temper and ordered them to stop. I thought he'd come to his senses. He came over, pretending to apologize, saying he'd been too impulsive and would wait for you. But when he spoke to me, something about him was off. His face twitched uncontrollably, his eyes rolled upward, showing only the whites. I thought it was fear and let my guard down. Who could have guessed? Just as I turned my back, he smashed a rock straight into the back of my head. After that, I don't remember anything." I nodded slowly. Suspicion stirred in me. This was no simple matter. From Uncle Huz's account, Trung Van Luong had entered the small forest before his change. Most likely, that was when he was possessed, his mind manipulated by the shadowy presence I had sensed there. From beginning to end, I had never truly seen that shadow's form, nor understood its aim. But one thing was certain. Whoever hid in that forest bore a deep grudge against the Trung family. Otherwise he would never have risked such madness. He not only wanted to kill the Trungs, but also intended to slaughter even the workers. His actions were already beyond reason, pure madness. Although I had temporarily stabilized the situation, I knew the hand behind this would not stop easily. As I spoke with Uncle Ha, dawn broke fully. The workers who had been lying unconscious began to wake up, one by one. I walked over and asked them if they remembered anything, but all shook their heads. They only recalled that, under Trung Van Luong's orders, they had continued digging. After unearthing several coffins, a white mist suddenly spread through the ancestral ground. Everyone felt weak and drowsy, then one after another fell into a deep sleep. Everything about it was too strange, even unsettling for me. Clearly the mastermind was a true expert, his methods profound and unfathomable. By then, Trung Van Luong had also awakened. He sat slumped on the ground, pale and drained, silent. I stepped closer, crouched before him, staring straight into his eyes without blinking. My gaze made him uncomfortable. He snapped, "What are you staring at? There's no flour on my face." I ignored his attitude, speaking evenly. "Do you remember what happened last night?" "No," he said curtly. "I was playing with my phone when I suddenly heard someone calling my name from the forest beside the ancestral ground. Curious, I went to check, and after that I remember nothing." His voice wavered slightly. I narrowed my eyes. "Answer honestly. Have you done anything against your conscience recently? Offended anyone?" At this, Trung Van Luong's face changed. His eyes darted, tone turning defensive and angry. I didn't do anything. Stop blaming me for everything. I paid you to move our ancestors' tombs. Money well spent. If you can do it, do it. If not, get out. Don't lecture me. How dare you talk to Master Ung like that? Trung Van Zhao stepped forward, furious. He saved your life last night. If not for him, you'd be dead already. Save me? I don't remember any of that. Stop putting words in my mouth. I'm done here. Going home to sleep. Trung Van Luong stood, turned, and watched straight out of the ancestral yard. I didn't stop him. I just watched his back disappear into the distance, certain now that something about him was wrong. From the first time I met him, I had sensed a heavy aura of killing intent on him. The only one in the entire Trung family to have such a presence. But he was stubborn and refused to say anything, and I couldn't force him. As he got farther away, I called out calmly, Trung Van Luong, keep hiding if you like. I can save you once, but not for life. If you keep silent and end up dead by another's hand, don't blame anyone else.
Chapter 58. Taking advantage of her. Hearing my words, Trung Van Leong's steps clearly faltered for a moment. But within a few seconds, he quickened his pace, got into his car, and drove away. The roar of the engine echoed through the valley before vanishing beyond sight. Standing beside me, Trung Van Zhao wore a helpless expression. Obviously, she too had no way of persuading her stubborn brother. After Trung Van Leong left, she turned to me apologetically. Master, no, please don't take my brother's words to heart. He's been spoiled by my father since childhood. That's just the way he is, stubborn and quick-tempered. I waved my hand, signaling her not to say more. One sibling constantly causing trouble while the other had to clean up after him. Such things were rare indeed. Despite being born of the same parents, Trung Van Zhao was gentle and sensible, whereas Trung Van Leong was rude, hot-headed, and even slightly unhinged. Seeing that my expression had darkened, she quickly changed the subject, asking softly, Master No, what should we do next? I glanced at the coffins still scattered across the ancestral graveyard, then at the wearied, dispirited workers nearby, and replied, We can't relocate the graves during the day. We'll have to wait until nightfall. Tell the workers to carry the coffins to that small forest nearby, leave 2 people to watch over them, and let the rest go home and rest. I'll come back tonight to finish the job. Trung Van Zhao nodded and went to instruct the workers. However, after last night's terrifying ordeal, none of them were willing to stay. Though they didn't know exactly what had happened, everyone understood that something was seriously wrong with this burial site. They feared that if they remained, they might lose their lives. Last night, they had been trapped inside coffins, falling into deep sleep without even knowing why. If they knew it was I and Trung Van Zhao who pulled them out, they'd probably have gone mad from fear. Thus, the workers all quit at once. No matter how much money the Trung family offered, none dared stay. Trung Van Zhao tried to persuade them, but it was useless. Within moments, the group had dispersed, leaving not a single person behind. She returned to me distressed. What should we do now? I was equally at a loss and told her to call Butler Wong to find another team of workers, preferably not locals, since rumors surely had spread by now. The villagers would never take the job. I instructed her to have the coffins moved to the small forest before noon, making sure sunlight did not touch them directly. Trung Van Zhao immediately phoned Butler Wong, explaining the situation. He agreed at once. Though exhausted, both she and I stayed behind at the Trung ancestral grounds to guard the coffins. There was little risk of theft. Who would steal coffins, especially those containing corpses? But my true concern was the shadowy figure who might return to tamper with the dead. To his credit, Butler Wong was astonishingly efficient. Barely 2 hours later, he arrived in a minivan with 5 or 6 sturdy young men. They quickly carried all the exhumed coffins to the nearby forest and assigned 2 men to keep watch. Only then did I and Uncle Hu follow Trung Van Zhao back to the old Trung residence. My injuries throbbed, and I was so drained from the long night that I fell asleep in the car before we even reached the house. When I woke, I found myself lying in bed. My arm felt cool. Turning my head, I saw Trung Van Zhao gently disinfecting my wound with iodine and carefully changing the bandage. The afternoon sunlight streamed through the window, coating her figure in a soft golden glow. Perhaps it was because I had just woken up, but the sight struck me as almost dreamlike. I watched her quietly as she worked, while she remained wholly focused on tending my wound. After a while, she suddenly noticed my gaze. Her cheeks flushed a delicate red, and she stammered shyly, "Master No, you're awake." "Miss Trung, thank you," I said sincerely. "There's no need to thank me, Master No. If anything, I should be the one thanking you. You've helped my family so much, and nearly lost your life doing it." Her voice was soft, gentle. I tried to sit up, but the moment I moved, pain flared sharply through my body, forcing a hiss from between my teeth. The gash left by the zombie's claws had not reached bone, but its nails had sunk deep into the flesh. The wound was swollen and raw, Any movement sent waves of agony shooting through my body. Seeing me grimace, Trung Bung Jiao hurried forward, grasping my arm. "Master, no, you're injured. Don't move too much." I said, "Help me up. I still have things to do." Without hesitation, she offered her shoulder, supporting me gently as I leaned against her and slowly sat up. It was the first time in my life I'd been in such close proximity to a woman. The faint fragrance from her hair brushed against my face, leaving me momentarily flustered. She, however, seemed completely unfazed. Just as she helped me upright, an angry voice thundered from the doorway. "You filthy bastard, take your hands off her!" I looked up, frowning in irritation. Somehow, Trung Van Leung had appeared at the door, perfect timing as always. Already feeling awkward, I instinctively withdrew my hand from Trung Bang Jiao's shoulder, but that single gesture only made things worse. Trung Van Leung took it as proof of guilt, pointing at me furiously. "No, Kip, I knew you were no good. You're just trying to take advantage of my sister. Don't even dream about it. You're not worthy." "What are you talking about?" Trung Ban Jiao snapped lividly. "Master Note nearly died saving you. He was clawed by a corpse because of you. I was only helping him sit up." "Ha, he looks perfectly fine to me. He's just using that as an excuse to get close to you. Let me teach him a lesson." With that, he clenched his fists and charged at me, but before he could reach me, a large hand seized his arm and hurled him backward. "You dare lay a hand on my young master. Seems you've grown tired of living," Uncle Hu said coldly, his eyes glinting with menace. Trung Van Leung flew several meters, nearly crashing into the wall. The noise drew the rest of the family. A deep voice called from outside, "What's going on?" Moments later, Trung Yuk Tung entered, his brows furrowed. Seeing his son sprawled on the floor, he immediately scowled. "What happened?" "Father," Trung Van Leung shouted, indignantly before anyone else could speak. "That bastard No Kiep is taking advantage of my sister. I saw him hugging her with my own eyes." "That's not true, father," Trung Van Jiao hurriedly explained. "Master No is injured. I was just helping him sit up from bed."
Chapter 59. Blood flowed from 7 orifices. I stood there feeling somewhat embarrassed. It was true that I found Trung Van Jiao beautiful, but I had absolutely no improper thoughts toward her. Moreover, it had been she who placed my hand on her shoulder to help me sit up. I truly hadn't expected Trung Van Luong to seize this moment as an excuse to pick a fight. Fortunately, Trung Ngoc Tang knew his son's temperament well. His face darkened instantly as he shouted, "You brat, stop your nonsense. Young Master O got injured this badly helping our family, and you, what were you doing last night? If it weren't for you, would he have ended up like this?" "Dad, I'm talking about your daughter." Trung Van Luong still wouldn't back down, glaring at me with hatred. "This guy never had good intentions. Back when you and Gao went to see him a few times, he refused every time, but the moment Gao went alone, he agreed right away. Isn't that obvious? He's after her. We shouldn't have hired him at all. There's still time. Kick him out. Don't let my sister get involved with him." His words made Trung Ngoc Tang hesitate. Indeed, he had brought his daughter to see me several times before, but each time Uncle Hu had turned them away at the door. Only after I met Trung Van Jiao at Wang Trio Zheng's banquet had I agreed to help the Trung family. But my refusals had nothing to do with unwillingness. My master had set 3 rules, one of which was never to take any work in yen back. Naturally, the Trung family didn't know this, and I didn't bother explaining. The atmosphere in the room grew tense, and I sensed something off. From the beginning, Trung Van Luong had shown hostility toward me, and now he was desperate to get rid of me. It was clear he was hiding something, or perhaps there was something wrong with him that he feared I might uncover. That must be why he was so eager to drive me away. At that moment, Trung Van Jiao angrily stepped forward, pointing straight at his brother's face. "Do you think everyone is like you? You spend all day flirting with other men's daughters. Has your conscience been eaten by dogs? Young Master O almost died saving you, and you dare to slander him like this?" "Trung Van Jiao," her brother roared, "you're a traitor. We're family, and he's an outsider. Or have you fallen for him already?" The moment he said that, Trung Van Jiao's face turned crimson. She didn't deny it, and even sneaked a quick, flustered glance at me. Seeing the situation spiraling out of control, Trung Ngoc Tang lost his temper. "Enough! Stop causing trouble! Get out of my sight before I lose my patience!" "Father!" Trung Van Luong shouted in protest. "Out!" Trung Ngoc Tang roared. Trung Van Luong clenched his teeth, glared venomously at me, then stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Uncle Hu, who had long disliked him, would have beaten him senseless if I hadn't stopped him. After he left, Trung Ngoc Tang hurried over and bowed deeply. "Young Master O, I am truly sorry. I failed to raise Van Luong properly, and he's behaved rudely toward you. Please don't hold it against us." I nodded, not wanting to dwell on it.
and changed the subject. Mr. Trung, I need to go out and find a new plot of land for your family's ancestral relocation. We'll continue the exhumation tonight. Young Master O, can you manage in your condition? It's fine, just a surface wound. I'll recover in a few days. With that, I signaled Uncle Hu to follow me. Staying there any longer would only make things more awkward, but just as I stepped out the door, Trung Van Zhao hurried after me. Young Master O, let me come with you. I replied evenly, no need. Uncle Hu will go with me. You should stay. Her expression faltered, filled with guilt and worry. Her voice softened. You're saying that because of what my brother said, aren't you? I shook my head. No, it's just unnecessary for too many people to go. Your father was possessed last night. He hasn't fully recovered yet. Stay and take care of him. With that, I turned and left with Uncle Hu, heading toward the edge of the village. After walking a while, I instinctively looked back and saw Trung Van Zhao still standing in the doorway watching us leave. Uncle Hu also turned his head, then chuckled. Young Master, you really have no feelings for Miss Zhao? I frowned. Don't talk nonsense. I'm just doing my job and getting paid. I have no interest in her. Uncle Hu wouldn't let it go. But I think she's quite taken by you. Honestly, she's not bad at all. If you like her, it wouldn't be a bad match. The Trungs are wealthy, and you're the disciple of Feng Shui Master Li Hyantong. Status-wise, you're well matched. Annoyed, I waved my hand. Enough, Uncle Hu. Stop adding fuel to the fire. If I really had any feelings for Trung Van Zhao, her brother probably would eat me alive. At the mention of Trung Van Luong, Uncle Hu ground his teeth angrily. Don't bring up that brat. If you hadn't stopped me, I'd have given him a good beating already. Truth be told, if this hadn't been my first major commission, I might have walked away long ago, letting fate take its course. But irritation or not, the job had to be done. So Uncle Hu and I spent the entire afternoon surveying the outskirts of the village, searching for a suitable location for the Trung family's new ancestral site. After hours of searching, we finally found a spot with decent feng shui. By the time we confirmed it, dusk had already fallen. As we started heading back, my phone suddenly rang. Seeing Trung Van Zhao's name on the screen, I answered immediately. The moment the call connected, her voice came through thick with sobs. Young Master O, please come back right now. My brother, something has happened to him. I froze. What happened? He was fine when I left. I don't know, she cried. After you left, he and my father argued violently. Then he locked himself in his room and refused to come out. At dinner, I called for him, but he didn't answer. When I knocked, there was no response, so I broke down the door and found him lying motionless on the bed, his face covered in blood. Please, come back quickly. Her words dissolved in desperate sobbing. I forced myself to speak calmly. All right, I'm coming now. Don't panic. I'll be there as soon as I can. Uncle Hu, who had heard everything, frowned deeply. What is wrong with that boy? First last night, now this? There's no end to the trouble. My jaw tightened. Let's go, quickly. Within barely 15 minutes, we were back at the Trung residence. What I saw made even me flinch. Blood was streaming from all 7 orifices of Trung Van Luong's face, his eyes, ears, nose, and mouth, thick and black as ink.
Chapter 60. The Doll in the Box. Inside the room, people stood packed together, faces pale and stricken with fear. The moment Ho Tu Thuk and I stepped in, Trong Gok Tang clutched at us as if we were his last hope, falling to his knees, voice trembling. Master O, I know my son has done wrong. He should never have been rude to you, but you didn't have to take his life. I beg you, spare him. Please, forgive him just this once. I was taken aback, while Ho Tu Thuk immediately grasped the misunderstanding. His expression turned cold as iron as he snapped, Mr. Trung, you think this is my young master's doing? That he made your son like this? It was your son who caused trouble first. If he deserves punishment, fine. But do you really believe my young master would harm him? I only have one son, Trong Gok Tang cried, tears and snot streaming down his face, his figure trembling pitifully. Trung, sir, I said calmly, those in our profession have rules. We never harm our clients. I am a Feng Shui master, not a murderer. You've misunderstood. Then what happened to my son? Trong Gok Tang asked with a trembling voice. Today my young master and I were out finding a new burial site for your ancestors. We just returned not long ago. How could we have had time to do anything to your son? Do you really think we're so petty? Ho Tu Thuk's tone was sharp with displeasure. I was wrong. Trong Gok Tang sobbed again. Master O, no matter what,
I beg you, please, save my son." I said nothing more and stepped to the bedside. The sight before me made my heart jolt. Trong Van Luang's face was streaked with black blood flowing from all 7 orifices, eyes, ears, nostrils, mouth, all seeping dark fluid. I carefully pressed my fingers against his wrist. His pulse was faint, barely there, but still detectable. He was alive, just barely clinging to one last thread. The sight was alarming. I turned and asked Trong Gok Tang, "After we left, what did he do? Where did he go?" "Nowhere," he answered shakily. "He only quarreled with me, then locked himself in his room. When Zhao Zhao called him for dinner, there was no reply. She broke the door open and found him like this." The butler, Mr. Wong, spoke cautiously. "Master, could it be that the young master thought too much and tried to take his own life?" "Impossible," Trong Gok Tang barked. "He may be brash and spoiled, but he's not the type to commit suicide. And to die over something like this? Absurd." I said nothing, just leaned closer to examine Trong Van Luong again. Opening my heavenly eye, I swept my gaze across his entire body, and I saw it clearly. A thick aura of death clung to him like mist. I gently lifted his eyelids. The whites of his eyes had turned completely black. This was the mark of possession. Not poison, but a curse. He had been hexed. "Someone cast a spell on him," I said in a low voice. Instantly my thoughts returned to the shadow I had seen near the Trong family's ancestral graves last night. Could it be the same entity that had now struck again? Whoever it was clearly bore deep hatred towards the Trongs, and this was not their first attack. "Who did this?" Trong Gok Tang demanded, trembling with fury. "Who dare harm my family? If I find them, I'll kill them with my own hands." I didn't answer him. Instead, I turned to Ho Tu Thuk. "Give me the compass." He immediately pulled the lupin from his satchel and handed it over. I walked slowly around the bed, holding the compass flat in my palm. The needle spun several times, then suddenly stopped pointing due north. "There's something wrong in that direction," I muttered. I began searching carefully through the room, but nothing unusual appeared. "Master O, what are you looking for?" Trong Van Xiao asked softly, her eyes wide with confusion. "If someone cursed your brother, they must have left something behind. I'm looking for the anchor object, the item used to suppress the curse." "Could it be outside the room?" Ho Tu Thuk interjected. His words struck me like lightning. Without hesitation, I grabbed the compass and strode towards the back of the house. Behind Trong Van Luong's room was a narrow alleyway overgrown with weeds, seldom used by anyone. His bedroom wall stood flush with the alley. I followed the wall carefully, compass in hand. The needle stayed fixed on the same spot as I moved forward. After several steps, I found it. A patch of earth at the base of the wall, directly behind the head of Trong Van Luong's bed, showed faint signs of disturbance. Whoever had dug there had tried to conceal it, but I could tell immediately. "Bring a spade," I ordered. Ho Tu Thuk ran off and quickly returned with one. I pointed at the spot, and he began to dig. 30 centimeters down, the spade struck something hard. A wooden box. It was much smaller than the coffins we had unearthed from the Trong ancestral grounds, but crafted in the same style, painted red and covered with strange talismanic runes. Some of the symbols were so ancient, I even couldn't recognize them. "Gloves," I said. Ho Tu Thuk slipped on a pair, then carefully lifted the box from the ground. When he pried it open, the stench of incense and iron drifted out. Inside lay a fabric doll sewn with unnerving precision. 7 iron nails were driven into its head, each one exactly piercing one of the 7 orifices: 2 eyes, 2 ears, 2 nostrils, and the mouth. I turned the doll over. On its forehead a golden talisman was glued, inked with Trong Van Luong's full birth date and 8-character destiny. Black strands of hair were wrapped tightly around the doll's torso. The moment I saw this, my suspicions hardened into certainty. The same hand that had placed cursed boxes in the Trong family's ancestral tombs was now the one who had attacked Trong Van Luong. The same technique, the same malicious intent, without doubt the same person. The others crowded closer, faces pale as death. "Master O," Trong Gok Pang stammered. What is that thing?" I met his eyes and said slowly, It's a curse effigy, a suppression charm. This is what made your son bleed from all 7 orifices. His life is hanging by a thread. Who did this? Trong Gok Tang's voice trembled with rage, his whole body shaking. Who is the bastard trying to destroy my entire family? I swear when I find them, I'll kill them. I held the red wooden box tightly and led everyone back into the courtyard. As soon as we stepped in, I turned sharply to face Trong Gok Tang, Trong Van Xiao, and Butler Wong. This box was freshly buried this afternoon. Did any strangers appear near the Trong residence today? They 3 exchanged glances, then all shook their heads. O2 Thuk frowned deeply. Someone dug a hole right behind your house, buried this thing, and none of you heard anything? No, Trong Van Xiao whispered, her face pale as wax. The truth was already forming in my mind. Ever since the moment I'd discovered those cursed boxes in the Trong family's ancestral tombs, I'd had a suspicion. The one orchestrating all this was likely a carpenter. The method used belonged to an ancient branch of Luban sorcery, the craft of the cursed artisan who builds with one hand and damns with the other.